Hi friends, I am CA Mahesh KS here. In this video, we will quickly revise Section 9 Levy and Collection and Section 10 Composition Levy. Both are Category A sections and very important sections. Approximately 60 key provisions are there in these two sections. At each attempt, 2 or 3 key provisions will be tested. Weightage is 4 to 6 marks. When come to applicability of CGST Act, in case of intrastate supply, that is supply within the states of India, CGST and SGST will be applicable. In case of supplies within union territories without legislatures, CGST and UTGST will be applicable. In case of union territories with legislatures, that is with assembly like Delhi, Jammu and Kashmir and Puducherry, CGST and SGST will be applicable. The reason is union territories with legislatures will be treated at par with states of India. When come to interstate supply, that is supply outside the state, for example, supply from one state to another state or one state to another union territory or one union territory to another union territory or one union territory to another state, IGST will be applicable. Good. What about supplies in territorial water? We all know that 12 nautical miles from the baseline, that is territorial water, is India and is a taxable territory. For example, if this is the border between Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu, and there is one oil extraction plant in the territorial water, which is 8 nautical mile from the Andhra Pradesh and 10 nautical mile from the Tamil Nadu. Scenario 1. A supplier in Tamil Nadu supplies some raw materials to the oil extraction plant in the territorial water. In this case, the location of the supplier is Tamil Nadu. The place of supply is Andhra Pradesh. The reason is Andhra Pradesh is the nearest coastal state to this oil extraction plant. So, in this case, IGST will be applicable. Scenario 2. The oil extraction plant in the territorial water supplies some oils to its customer in the Andhra Pradesh. In this case, the location of the supplier is Andhra Pradesh. The reason is Andhra Pradesh is the nearest coastal state to this oil extraction plant. In this case, CGST and SGST will be applicable. Tax shall be collected and paid by the taxable person. Alcoholic liquor for human consumption is outside the purview of GST Act, and GST shall be levied on transaction value calculated under Section 15 of the CGST Act. The maximum rate of CGST is 20% and maximum rate of SGST is 20% and maximum rate of IGST is 40%. In case of HP MAN, that is high speed diesel, petroleum crude, motor speed, that is commonly known as petrol, aviation turbine fuel and natural gas. Currently GST is not applicable, but GST would be levied on those items with effect from notified date. Government is yet to notify date. Government notifies certain goods and services on which tax to be paid by the recipient of the supplies under reverse charge mechanism. When come to goods, goods are outside this your syllabus, so you don't want to worry about goods. The government notifies 22 services under which GST is to be paid by the recipient of the supplies under RCM. With respect to these 22 services, three things are very important. They are: number one, the nature of service; number two, the service provided by whom; and number three, the recipient of the service. And two things are common to all these 22 services. That is, the service is provided by the unregistered person and the recipient of the service is a registered person located in a taxable territory. Out of these 22 services, 20 services are notified under CGST Act and 2 services are notified under IGST Act. First, we will see the 20 services notified under CGST Act. First, atomic. A. Arbitral tribunal. Services provided by arbitral tribunal to a business entity. In this case, the business entity is liable to pay tax under RCM. T. Transfer of development rights, floor space index, including additional floor space index for construction of a project. Service is provided by any person. The recipient of the service is promoter. In this case, the promoter is liable to pay tax under RCM. O. O is overseeing committee. Services provided by member of overseeing committee to Reserve Bank of India. In this case, Reserve Bank of India is liable to pay tax under RCM. M. Motor vehicle. Renting of motor vehicle designed to carry passengers, on which cost of fuel is included in the consideration. The service is provided by any person and the recipient of the service is body corporate. In this case, the body corporate is liable to pay tax under RCM. I. Insurance agent. Services provided by insurance agent to any person carrying on insurance business. C. Copyright. Services by way of transfer or transfer of title or transfer of right to use or enjoyment of copyrights in relation to original, musical, literary or artist work. The service is provided by the music composer, artist, author of the books, and the recipient of the service is music company, producer and any publisher. There is one exception to this case, that is the author of the book has the option to pay tax under forward charge. For that, the author has to fulfill three conditions. Number one, he has to apply for registration. He should give declaration to the department that he opt to pay tax under forward charge mechanism, and he cannot withdraw his option for 1 year from the date of exercising the option. Next, B. Business facilitator. Services provided by business facilitator to any banking company. Another B. Business correspondent. Services provided by agent of business correspondent to a business correspondent. D. Director. Services provided by director of a company or body corporate to such company or body corporate. There is one exception to these services, that is, if any remuneration is paid to the director in the name of salary and TDS is deducted under section 192, then GST will not be applicable. Any amount is paid to the director other than in the name of salary and TDS is deducted other than under section 192, then GST will be applicable. Another D is direct selling agent. Services provided by direct selling agent to a banking company. Yes, sponsorship services. Service is provided by any person to a body corporate or a partnership firm. In this case, the body corporate and partnership firm is liable to pay tax under RCM. Another S is security service. Security service provided by any person to a body corporate. In this case, the body corporate is liable to pay tax under RCM. R. Recovery agent. Services provided by a recovery agent to a banking company or financial institutions or NBFC. Another R. Renting of immovable property for residential dwelling to a registered person. In this case, the registered person is liable to pay tax under RCM, even it has been provided for residential purpose. Next, L. Legal services. Legal services provided by the individual advocate, senior advocate and firms of advocate to a business entity. In this case, the business entity is liable to pay tax under RCM. Another L. Long-term lease of land for 30 years or more. Service is provided by any person to a promoter. In this case, the promoter is liable to pay tax under RCM. Another L. Lending of securities. Lending of securities by the lender and receiver is the borrower. In this case, borrower is liable to pay tax under RCM. G. Government. All services provided by the government except for, that is part P. Postal department. Services provided by postal department. A. Aircraft. Services in relation to aircraft or vessels or renting of immovable property. T. transportation of goods and passengers. Except these four services, all other services provided by the government. Government means central government, state government, union territory, and local authorities to a business entity. In this case, the business entity is liable to pay tax under RCM. In case of R, that is renting of immovable property, if the service is provided by the government to a registered person, then the registered person is liable to pay tax under RCM. If renting of immovable property service is provided by the government to an unregistered person, then government will pay tax under forward charge mechanism. When come to two services notified under IGST Act, NT, N, non-taxable territory. Any person provides services from non-taxable territory to any person in a taxable territory. Then tax to be paid by the person in the taxable territory under RCM, except the service is provided to a non-taxable online recipient, that is unregistered person in a taxable territory. In simple words, if any service is imported by unregistered person, then RCM will not be applicable. If any service is imported by a registered person, then the registered person shall pay tax under RCM. T. Transportation of goods by vessel. The service is provided by a person in non-taxable territory. Recipient is the importer in India. So, if the importer in India imports any goods through a vessel of foreign countries, then he has to pay tax under RCM. If services like HAT are, that is housekeeping services like carpenting or plumbing, or accommodation services either for residential purpose as well as lodging purpose like OYO, and transportation of passenger services through motor car, motor cab or radio taxi like Ola, or restaurant services like Swiggy. If supplied through economic commerce operator ECO, then the ECO is liable to pay tax under forward charge mechanism. He is primarily responsible to pay tax to the government. But there is one exception to this provision, that is, if the housekeeping services or accommodation services provider is liable to registered or a registered person, he has to pay tax on their own. In that case, ECO is not having any liability to pay tax. Next, section 10, composition levy. If a person is applying for new registration, he can opt for composition scheme anytime during the financial year. But if a already registered person is wish to switch to composition scheme, he can do so only at the beginning of the financial year, if his turnover limit in the preceding financial year is within the threshold limit. The turnover limit in preceding financial year to opt for composition levy for goods or restaurant services is for special category states except Assam, Himachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir is rupees 75 lakhs. If you want to say in other words, Sun ATM, Sikkim, Uttarakhand, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh, Tripura, Manipur, Meghalaya and Mizoram. For these 8 special category states, the turnover limit is rupees 75 lakhs. For remaining states, the turnover limit is 1.5 crores. When come to turnover limit in preceding financial year, to opt for composition levy for services other than restaurant services is rupees 50 lakhs in the preceding financial year. These will applicable for all states including above 8 special category states. The next question is how to calculate the turnover. While calculating the turnover limit, we should include the values of taxable supplies, exempt supplies, that is nil rate supply, wholly exempt supplies and non-taxable supplies, export supplies, interstate supplies, and these to be computed on all India basis of persons having same PAN. And value of supplies made from 1st April of the financial year till the date is become liable to registration should also be included. A person who opt for composition scheme is not permitted to make interstate supplies and export supplies in the said financial year. Even rupees 1 export sales or interstate supplies if he made, he become ineligible to continue as a composition dealer. Next is rate of tax. The rate of tax for goods. If a registered person is a manufacturer, The rate of tax is 0.5% of CGST and 0.5% of SGST or UTGST of turnover in a state or union territory. I use the word turnover in a state or union territory. Turnover means taxable supplies as well as exempt supplies. If a registered person is a restaurant service provider, then the rate of tax is 2.5% of CGST and 2.5% of SGST and UTGST of turnover in a state or union territory. If a registered person is a trader, then 0.5% of SGST and 0.5% of CGST of turnover of taxable supplies in a state or union territory. So, in case of traders, tax to be paid only on taxable supplies. In case of services, the applicable rate of tax is 3% CGST and 3% SGST. Some conditions and restrictions for composition levy are: RCM is applicable for the person who opt for composition scheme, except for security services availed. And he shall mention the words composition taxable person not eligible to collect tax at the top of the bill of supply. And also mention the words composition taxable person at his place of business. The following persons are not eligible to opt for composition scheme. Number 1. Supply of service. A person can make supply of service in case the person is opt for composition scheme for services, maximum up to rupees 50 lakhs. If a person opt for composition scheme for goods, he can make supply of services other than restaurant services for value not exceeding 10% of the turnover in the preceding financial year in a state or union territory, or rupees 5 lakhs whichever is higher. It means this ceiling limit is applicable for each state. So rupees 5 lakhs is applicable for each state. And while computing the turnover in a state, interest on loans, deposits and advances should not be considered. Next is interstate outward supplies. If a person makes interstate outward supplies, he is not eligible to opt for composition scheme. That is, supply from one state to another state, or from one state to another union territory, or from one union territory to another union territory, or from one union territory to another state. Non-taxable supplies. A person making non-taxable supplies like alcoholic liquor for human consumption is not eligible to opt for composition scheme. Non-resident taxable person is not eligible to opt for composition scheme. Manufacturer of notified goods. Manufacturer of notified goods like tobacco, ice cream, pan masala, tiles, earthen and roofing, aerated water, bricks and blocks made by fly ash, then casual taxable person is not eligible to opt for composition scheme. Then ECO, electronic commerce operator, who are required to deduct tax at the source are not eligible to opt for composition scheme. Other key points: bill of supply shall be issued instead of tax invoice. Tax shall not be collected from recipient of supply. He cannot avail input tax credit. And composition scheme, if availed, shall include all registered persons having same PAN. Penalty shall be imposed in case of irregular availment of composition scheme. That is, if he is not eligible for composition scheme but opt for composition scheme. Thank you.